Why hello there and welcome back to day 3 of the StrikeBack-video-a-thon. Tired of my face yet? Because I'm tired of filming these videos already. So today's prompt is fave fantasy reads. I've mentioned in the past 2 videos from the past 2 days that I read a lot of fantasy, and I thought I did until I was getting ready to do this. So I was like, I read a crap ton of fantasy, but now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't really read a lot of fantasy till I read Mistborn, and I just feel like I read a lot of fantasy, but I'm such a slow reader that I don't really read as much as I think I do. So this will be an interesting video. So first I want to talk about, because this video mentioning fantasy would not be complete if I didn't mention the series, but that's the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, all 6 books that are out. I know the last 3 are actually technically a different series, but it's still placed in the same world, just 300 years after the first series. Holy crap, this series is something else. I actually have book talks over the 1st through the 5th book that I'll leave linked down below. I'll just link the playlist down below. Holy crap, this is such an amazing series. I love his writing and I love his characters and his fantastical worlds. This deals in a world that really reminds me a lot of Victorian London-esque. In this world, the magical system is based off of metals. If you can digest a certain type of metal, you can get a certain type of power, and there are people called Mistborns who have control over all 10 metals, and then there's Mistings who only have control over 1 metal. And so this series, the original series, we follow Vin, who is a street urchin, as she refers to herself, who works for thieving crews, and then she gets kind of roped into this really well-known, famous thieving crew, and basically they're trying to set up a plot to overthrow the oppressing Lord Ruler, who is, the bad guy that's killing people. And holy crap, it's just so cool. It's very political. It deals a lot with high society, and it's just top notch. I really loved it. I know a lot of people love it, and I know some people are like, yeah, the first book was really good, the second book wasn't that good, and the third book was okay. And I'm like, really love the first book. Second book was, yeah. And then the third book I just really loved. I loved seeing all of it, and the ending, like I've already said, is one of my favorite endings of all time. I never saw it coming. I think the one thing I really love about this book is since I read so much, I've become really attuned to guessing endings before they actually happen, and I had no idea with any of the plot twists this series took. And I know it is technically high fantasy, but it's not hard to read. It's a great starting point, especially if you want to get into fantasy. I definitely recommend Mistborn. The books are a little chunky, but you fly through them. They're next, I feel this wouldn't be complete without either. This is a YA series that is, any of the Shadowhunter books by Cassandra Clare. I've only read, the prequel trilogy, In For All Devices, and I'm currently rereading and trying to finish Mortal Instruments because I still haven't read City of Heavenly Fire, like I told you yesterday. This is an urban fantasy, which honestly, I like high fantasy, but I think my favorite subgenre of fantasy is urban fantasy. Just seeing the unreal within the real is just super awesome. This, for those of you who don't know, which I feel like everybody knows unless you've been living under a rock or don't read YA, the Shadowhunter Chronicles follows a special group of people called Shadowhunters, and basically they're half human, half angel, and they fight demons and deal with the downworlders, so werewolves and vampires and fairies and mermaids and stuff like that. Each series kind of centers around a different group. So In For All Devices is a group of Shadowhunters within 1800s London, which is amazing, just saying. Mortal Instruments series is set around 2007 in New York and dealing with that group of kids. And then the Dark Artifice series, which is the one she's currently working on, I don't remember what year it takes place. I think it's more recently, but it takes place in LA. And so this is just, I don't want to say top notch because the first couple of books of Mortal Instruments series are not that great, and Claire is really annoying, but if you push through it, it gets better. And just stay in it for Simon. Stay in it for Simon and Magnus, because they're great. And In For All Devices is way better than Mortal Instruments, but it's whatever. That's just my opinion. I know it's a lot of people's opinion actually, and a lot of people really love the Dark Artifices a lot. I haven't read them, so I have no opinion on them yet. Next, this is a random book that I just kind of picked up from my now long dead book club, and that is Entwined by Heather Dixon. I had never heard of this book, it was whatever, until I was part of this book club for a very short few months before it died off, and this was our pick for 1 month. And basically this is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which I have never really heard the original story. I think I watched I think I watched the Barbie remake when I was younger, but that's about it. But this deals with, you know, 12 princesses. It's after the death of their mother, and they live within a land in a castle where there used to be magic, but now there's not, except for like small little items still hold their magical abilities. And they one day so they're in mourning for like a year, and they're not like allowed to leave the castle or anything, and they one day stumble upon this strange room they've never noticed before, and within this room is a man who likes to dance. And so they start going to him and dancing with him, and then it turns out to be something a little different. Honestly, had no expectations for this book going in. I was just like, okay, this is what you want to read, okay, I'll buy it and read it. Holy crap, this book is amazing. It's still like one of my favorite fantasy reads, even though it's like not super like fantastical. Like, I suggest everybody read it. The writing is very lyrical, and I just really loved it. I love our main character, Azalea. Oh yeah, they're all named after flowers on top of that. This is, and like Brennable is like such a kick-ass girl. Like, she's so funny. I definitely suggest reading this book. You'll fly through it. I loved it. And like, funny enough, like, I was like, I've never heard of this book. I didn't think anybody else had. I was talking to my roommate one day, like when we like first like moved in like freshman year of college together. I'm like trying to get the feel for each other, you know, because we have a lot of the same opinion, like taste in books. And I was like, oh, I think you like this book. And she's like, oh, I've read that book. I love it. I was like, heck yes. Everybody should read this book. It's amazing. Just saying. I don't know if this technically fits into this series, like this genre, but I'm gonna put it in there anyways. And that's like basically anything that takes place within the Percy Jackson world by Rick Riordan. I don't know technically if that counts as fantasy, but like they do deal with fantastical creatures and gods and stuff, so I feel like it kind of does. This is actually like the original Percy Jackson series is the series of books that got me into actually like reading for like personal fun and stuff. Loved it. It's amazing. These are middle grade, which I don't see a problem with, you know, reading middle grade when you're an adult, because I do it and I enjoy them so much. Or the original series like intertwines like Greek mythology within the it's like an urban fantasy kind of thing, like the unreal within the real, and I just like really enjoyed it. So like first series, if you don't know, Percy Jackson, we follow a boy named Percy who finds out he's a demigod, which is half human, half god, and like his adventures through that for the first series. Second series, we get introduced to Roman mythology within the Percy Jackson world, and we get to see all our favorite characters from the Percy Jackson series and how that works out. Holy crap, that's amazing. And then he just recently finished another series which deals with the Norse mythology, Magnus Chase, which is even better. Like, honestly, as much as I love Percy Jackson, I think Magnus Chase like almost tops it, but I think that's probably because I most recently have read Magnus Chase, and it's been at least a year since I've read Percy Jackson. These books are just so fun. The adventure is so fun. Like, I loved getting to meet the characters. I love this world. I love seeing like the different gods and stuff interact. It's just great. This is a really fun time if you just want kind of like a funny read to like get through. I mean, this does deal with some darker topics, but I feel like they're dealt with in a very well way. Definitely recommend these to anybody. Like, don't be ashamed of middle grade just because you're an adult and it's like, oh, well, these are like, you know, for kids, what is it, like 8 to 12? Like, heck no, go ahead and read it. Like, I walked into the kids section of Barnes & Nobles about myself, the latest installment of Magnus Chase, and I had no shame. And I guess the last one I'm going to say, I don't want to technically say it's a favorite, but I think the reason I don't consider it a favorite is because it took me so long to read it, and that's going to be Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. You know, everybody knows the TV show Game of Thrones. It took me like 7 to 8 months to finish this book, and I feel like if I had been able to fully grasp it and read it within like, you know, one period of time, I would have really liked it a lot more than I did. I still really enjoyed it. I found it very intriguing. I found a lot of characters very interesting, and the world is very interesting. And so this book, I would be tentative of going into this book though if you don't read a lot of fantasy. I even had trouble reading this, and because this is very, very heavy high fantasy, I feel like, because we see from a lot of different characters. Like, it's not like, you know, 3 to 4, which I mean, I'm like, if you get past 2 characters, you kind of lose me. But like this, literally, I think there's like 10 to 12 different characters you see perspectives from throughout the book, and holy crap. And then of course, like, you're trying to cover this massive world, and all these characters live in different parts of the world, and like how they interact, and it's just a lot going on. So it took me a while to kind of like learn the world, to get used to the characters and jumping around, like, oh, this was happening up in the north, and now we're like way down in the south in King's Landing, and there's like this whole other thing, and then we're gonna jump over here and do something else, but then, oh, we're gonna go back to that problem in the north. And I'm like, what? So I needed to take a lot of breaks, and also I own the mass paperback editions, so they kind of strain my eyes a little bit when I try to read them because the print's kind of small. But honestly, I would really suggest this. Like, it was very interesting. If not, I guess you could watch the TV show. I've only watched a couple episodes of it. I think the TV show was really awesomely done. I can see why a lot of people love Game of Thrones as a TV show. Again, just be very hesitant going into this if you don't read a lot of like high, heavy fantasy, because you're gonna need to take breaks, which is fine. Like, if you're reading this book, like, take breaks. It's fine. That's what I did. That's why it took me 7 to 8 months. I had to read a bunch of other books in between this book. I think that's about it for my fantasy. Like, when I first saw this as one of the topics, I was like, heck yeah, I've got so many recommendations. And now, like, sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, you know, I say I read a lot of fantasy, and I do now, but I'm like, I feel like I really haven't read that much. Or at least ones that came out as favorites. Those are my my faves for, and my recommendations for you guys. So let me know down below if some of your favorite fantasy reads, do you agree with me on any of these? Do you don't? You know, it's fine, it's whatever. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. Until then, I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye!